the women's football is something on beyond that. It's going to be like massive. It's just a matter of time when it is. And now I can actually be helping out to make sure it goes quicker. And I think that's feels good in my heart.
So I just sort of wanted to start with the first question. And obviously, looking at sort of your experience, you've worked in sport throughout your entire career, but was this like something that you always knew you wanted to do? Did you always know you wanted to work in sport or in football in general in the first place, or did it come about a certain way?
No, it was when I was a really young guy. Went with my brother and my dad to his soccer practice. I've been like growing up with football as one sport, and that's the only sport for me. And growing up in a small village outside a city, you don't really have so much to do. So we were on the lawn and just play football all the time. So I had my dreams from the beginning to become a footballer, and I was quite good in Sweden, but I didn't really go the whole way. But then I find a new way with the coaching career. So I'm really, I'm so happy to keep working with football because it doesn't feel like a job. It feels like I'm doing the most fun part in the world every day, and I'm not like going to work and feeling, oh, it's a boring day today. It's just a happy day every day, basically.
I think to understand everybody's kind of story, I think you've got to go from when they're born, from where they started off. Now, I need to pronounce this right, and I'm gonna try and pronounce it right in my accent. Is it you're born in Hacken? Is that right? Is it Hacken?
So Häcken is the team. I was the last club in Sweden before I went to before I went to England. But so in Sweden, you have a really big club called IFK Gothenburg, and I played for them when I was younger. They were big in the Champions League on the 90s. They won the UEFA Cup in the 80s. It was the biggest club in Sweden, and I played for them. So I was a really talented player. But then this new club in Sweden came up a few years ago. It's called BK Hacken, and they are basically they won the league for the men's team a few years back, and they are always in the top with the women's team. So that's like one of the best gender equity clubs in Europe, I would say, because they treat them very much as people and not according to the gender. So, but Häcken was a good pronunciation.
What really kind of attracted you to the game? Was it by your parents? Was it by your siblings? Was it by your kind of environment that you were in?
I guess it's the environment with my mom, her siblings played football. In that, when I'm older than you guys, we was not too many sports you could do in the countryside. It was football, it was a few more sports, but you could only watch one sport on television, and it was English football. So I grew up with football all around my siblings, my friends, my cousins, and so that was my pathway, and I loved it. But it's of course it's an environment and the friends and family. Yeah.
And can you talk to me about your school then? You obviously went in there, you obviously got brought up there. Can you talk to me about your kind of academies that you played for? Did you go for more kind of grassroots?
Yeah, so absolutely grassroots. I was always quite good. So I always played with the boys 1 year older. So that was my team. I always played with them. Sometimes with the team was 2 years older as well. And then I actually started playing senior football when I was 15. So I was so good. So my team, the senior team, put me up and played me in Division 3 in Sweden. So I was very young playing there. And then the national team of youth saw me playing in this division and scoring goals as a 15, 16-year-old. So they put me in the national teams. I played a few youth national team games. And when I did that, then all the clubs saw me and wanted to invite me. So I was in most of the clubs in Sweden, and I went over to England actually and had a try with Wimbledon. They were in the Premier League at that time. But then I actually went to an academy. So I was 16. I was a little bit scared of moving to London when I was 16. I was a little bit scared of going to a senior team in another city. So I went to an academy, the IFK Gothenburg Academy, which was the best academy in Sweden. I was full-time paid when I was 16, turning 17. So I still went to school, but I couldn't go to school because we trained 10 o'clock. So I still had to do both. But it was like, it was a big, good education football-wise for me. But, when you go back to that time, this is I think it's 2000. The academies was not so good to take care of the whole picture. They didn't really see the whole, like, okay, here comes a really young guy from a small village. Now we need to make sure he play football. But I also I needed to go to bed early. I needed to eat right and everything. But that was not a part of the academy plan at that time. There was only a footballer. So I struggled a lot with being professional, I would say. So I was a good footballer. I made my way up to it, but I didn't take care of myself in a long time to make sure I had a good ground to stand on.
The reason why I asked that is because the environment that a lot of these players are in now, when they kind of grow up, you know, a lot gets kind of put on them in terms of the pressure by their parents or by their coaches. Can you talk to me a bit about the kind of environment that you were in? Were your parents really kind of pushy on you? Was the environment where the coaches pushing on you, or was it more relaxed?
So I was the opposite. I mean, my mom and dad stayed in this village. I lived on my own, and they were not pushing at all. So I kind of, you know, I needed to take care of everything on my own, and so my parents didn't push me at all. So it's if you look at the other stuff that would do that, I didn't have that. So in one way, I might needed a little bit more push to make sure I take control of what I've done. But I'm not that kind of a guy, and the coaches in that club didn't really like push me in that way either. They treat me the way I decided, you know, that I I was not the best boy every time. I was kind of, you know, up and down. I was trying to make sure I find my way in life. So I was more like finding ways to take care of my talent, because I had enormous talent, but I didn't have the talent to train hard. I didn't have the talent to be professional. So even if I played in the highest division in Sweden 2 years, I was only 18, 19 when I played for IFK Göteborg in Allsvenskan, the highest division, but there was no way I could handle my career. So it was just when I was, 22, 23, when I met my wife and I started to be mature and go to university. Then when I realized, okay, you need to do more than just use your talent. You need to have a plan. You need to do the hard work. You need to do everything. So for me, I think I would have needed more help around me. But it's hard when you're 16, 17, 18 and think you are the best in the world, because you don't really ask for the help either. So I've learned the hard way, and I'm trying to use that, when I'm a coach now. I'm trying to use it as much as I can to make sure I try to see the players. What do they need? How can I help them and their environment?
Can you talk to me a bit about how you would coach a player now? So you obviously work as a coach. You've obviously worked in that kind of environment. Can you, if there was a player now also coming up now, and they had the talent, we've seen it a lot of times where they have the talent, where they have the ability, but they maybe need that extra push, or they have the ability, but they need a hand. They need a hand around the shoulder, and they need that kind of encouragement. How do you kind of handle those kind of both players?
I mean, I think I try to get to know them as much as I can, and I try to get as much information about everybody as I can, and then I'm trying to use my staff team around me to make sure we give them what they need. So if you look at Tottenham, you have Molly Bartrip, who is not the youngest one, but she's been through a big journey, and to make sure you give her the trust, and she's the vice captain this year, and amazing leadership, developing that kind of stuff. Then you have Lena, who is really young and was on a loan to Ipswich, and then I try to make sure who is speaking to her, when do I speak to her, what does she need from me, and how is her life situation and everything. And so every day you try to make sure you get some more information so you can treat them in their special way, because I think you cannot treat everybody in the same way. You need to make sure you treat them according to what they need and what I can provide with them, because my job is to maximize their performance and development, all of them, even if they play or not playing. So I'm trying to know them. I'm trying to know so much about them, and I'm trying to find ways to teach them, coach them, help them. So Grace Clinton is an obvious person that I got to know, and I'm getting to know even more every day when I work with her this year. And she needs a lot of sometimes love, and then sometimes she needs the push, and you need to find the right day and right timing for that. And the only way is to actually get to know the players. If you don't know the players, you treat them as robots, and then it's really hard to make them to perform.
Robert, I just want to go back to before you joined Spurs, and sort of what was the first indication you had of the club might be approaching you, and what made you pick to join Spurs and leave Hacken?
I think I was at a really good spot in Hacken, because BK Hacken is a really good club, and they are having, they have a great women's side, men's side. They treat them in a really equal way. They have good, economy and everything. We were at top of the table. I think we were 7 points down to the second one. So I was heading for my title in Sweden. But the main thing is when I'm in Sweden, you still want to go to the next level, which is England is the biggest league. It's the biggest country with football, I would say. But I wouldn't pick any team, because I feel like you need to make sure you find the right connection, and they need to find the right way that they really want you, and you want to feel like we can have a good relationship together, right? So the main thing with Tottenham, and when they fired Rhiannon, and I saw the potential of this club. They were the fifth spot the year before, and they were struggling a lot, and they had some really bad result. And sometimes when you look at it and you see that that's actually Tottenham Hotspur, it's a massive club that want to do something with the women's football. Then I was like, okay, this is a club that I feel like could be a good match for me. So when I had the first interview, I had a good feeling about it, but I didn't know it. But then I heard about it and how they want to make sure to be one club, how they want to have one style, how they want me to help them to play with a certain identity, how we want to make sure we play with young, talented players, and how we want to develop over time and not just come here, buy the best players and win directly. Then it was, okay, that's how I have built my whole career, to play with talented players that can grow and win together and play a fun football where you can feel like we're playing a certain way no matter what. So it was a perfect match, and I just feel like it still is, because we are not done yet, and we still develop, but we still know where we're going, and we still want to go in the same pace and everything. So that's why I ended up in Tottenham, because it felt like, yeah, this is the real thing, and this is why I'm bringing my family to a new country, because I feel like this is a good relationship.
And you said there obviously about one club and sort of really building that at Spurs. I wanted to ask about sort of your sort of like relationship with sort of the men's side of the club and the owner of the club. Is that really positive? Obviously, we've seen in recent times that can be quite difficult for a women's team, and maybe they don't have that same support. You know, we've seen that this week with Manchester United owners and what they, you know, their comments sort of about the women's team and not really making it a priority. Do you have that positive relationship with the owners and sort of obviously with the men's team and with Ange Postecoglou as well? Is that something that is, you know, is really important at Spurs?
I mean, it is, and I think that's a part of it why I ended up in Tottenham, because in Hacken I was first the assistant coach for the men's team, and then I went to become the head coach of the women's team, and I worked with all the staff members for the men's team. So when I went over to the women's side, they were my friends and they were my colleagues anyway. So I worked in an environment where I was the coach for the women's team, but I was a part of BK Hacken, and I had meetings with the men's head coach every day basically, and we were on the same pitches and in the same gym and everything. So when I went to Tottenham, that was one of the biggest questions I had for the board, was like, are you doing this for the real? Are you actually want to have one club with everything what comes with that? And of course they haven't had so many years together. The women's team is quite young in Tottenham, but yes, they want that. But it's also like, you also need to know the history, the journey, and you cannot do everything on one day. So I kind of got the feeling like, yes, we want to do it. We want to make sure we take step by step. And I must say, from day one, and when I came into Tottenham, they have shown me that they want to take it step by step. And I'm it's a big thing for me. So I'm driving it quite much. So, you know, when we are at the fan forum before the season, it was me and Beth in England and Son and Ange and then Olivia on the stage. And that showed me like, oh, all the 5 of us is on this stage. We added a few games on the big stadium. The fans came, Daniel came, Ange came. They showed us that they're actually supporting us. Scott Mann came. So it was like, okay, this is actually, they're showing that they do it. And in the environment, I'm invited to the board meeting sometimes when Ange is as well, and then we speak about the women's side and the men's side. I'm invited to how we're going to develop the whole club with strategies and everything. So they're showing that they treat me in a way where I feel respected, and that is important for the club. Me and Ange, we meet sometimes at different sponsorship meetings and everything, but also just actually grabbing a coffee and have an hour's talk where we speak about, we are 2 new coaches in this club, and we sit down and speak, and I ask him about his experiences and what he feel like he need to work on in Tottenham, and I can speak about my role. And he's been here a few more months than me, and I'm quite I admire how he plays with the men's team. We don't really play exactly the same formation with the fullbacks, but we play the same style with the same identity, the same attacking style, the same bravery. And for me, sometimes it's really nice to speak to somebody who is your colleague but not your colleague in your room. So I meet him once a month, I could say, and he's really, really keen on meeting as well. He doesn't really like, oh, I need to meet Robert. He actually shows some really good interest, and that makes me really certain that this club is one club. Then of course you have a history. This club is a very old club with men's side, and the women's football is quite young. So you also need to have respect that you cannot take every fight all the time. You need to make sure it's there's something that you need to teach or let time be. So you're learning by doing, basically. And I think that's what you see in other clubs as well. Sometimes I don't think they say the right stuff, but I don't think they mean it. I just feel like this perhaps doesn't really understand, oh, that was not the right word to use in this occasion. I think most of the people in the Premier League club now want to make sure we take steps. But I feel like Tottenham want to be one of those clubs who who drive this journey, and I want to be a coach that drive the gender equity journey, and I want to make sure I improve women's football because it's a really, really strong topic for me. So that's why it's nice to be in Tottenham and not another club where I don't feel like I get the right help.
Yeah, it's really positive to see that as well. And obviously, like in terms of what you're doing sort of at Spurs, you can really tell from the outside, like that you're really building something, you know, like on and off the pitch. And especially like with the group of players that you've got, I feel like, you know, there's a real sense of like, you know, you're all together and you're all on the same page. And I was, when speaking to Molly Bartrip, she said, you know, you're a really tight group. And I just wanted to know, sort of, since coming in, what are those principles that you've put in place? Maybe not just necessarily tactics, but with the team as a whole to try and get that group to really connect and really work together on and off the pitch.
I think my leadership is more built on the environment than the tactics. Of course, I have a game model, I have structure and everything, but the main thing I start and work with every day is the environment. And I try to connect it to 4 words. So one is to be professional, that everybody need to be professional. That's the only way forward to make sure we get the women's football and the environment to be in high standards, because we want to be the best run club in the world. We want to win titles. We want to make sure we improve. So we need to use the time to be professional. So that's one of the things we make sure everybody need to have in the training ground. Everybody need to take decisions built on being professional. And then the second one is to show passion. I think that's you don't really need to do it my way, but you need to show me that you want to bring energy to the squad, to the environment. You need to show everybody that you want to be there, because otherwise you should be in another club. I feel like when you get that energy, when everybody help each other, because everybody have a bad day. And if I having that bad day, it's really nice to get other people giving me the energy because they show the passion, and then you quickly back again and you run it, right? So we always come back to that they need to show passion. We need to show passion to each other. And if you have a really bad day, of course you can be a little bit lower, but you shouldn't steal the energy, because then you don't create the best energy and the best environment. The third thing is basically to be brave. So to dare is to do is the Tottenham logo. It's like we want to make sure we're not coming in there and feeling afraid of taking all these new adventures we're going to do. We need to be brave in decision making. It could be like having discussions with me about why I'm not playing. It could be when you are one against the opponent who is really good, or it could be like whatever. You need to be brave enough to take the brave choice, because that's the identity of Tottenham. And if you're not brave, it's very hard to play at Wembley or at the big stadiums, you know. So we always come back to be brave. It's okay to do mistakes as long as you keep going and want to develop. So instead of, you know, not taking any bravery and just play calm and play like with no risk, then you're probably not going to play. So when Becky Spencer failed in the FA Cup final with being brave, it's no way I'm going to put her on the bench of that game just because of that position, you know, that action, because she's trying to be brave. She's trying to do what we talked about. So I'm trying to make sure that players understand that it's okay to do mistakes, but they can still go for it. Then you can always play or not play, depending on how you perform over time and so on, but not about being brave. And the fourth thing is to be present. I mean, everybody's coming to work every day and are there, but for me, it's being present is something else. It's actually to be involved in the meetings, in the passing drill, in the kitchen duties, and whatever we do, we need to make sure players and staff are present and showing that we do this together. Because if you treat people in that way, it's the same for you guys. If you go to class or to the meetings and you're not really listening to the people speaking or whatever, you kind of not creating the best environment for anyone. So if I'm having this talk to you guys and you feel like you're watching your phone or whatever, it will feel like, oh, why should I speak to you guys? You don't give me the right signals back, right? So it's the same when I have a speak in front of the game, or if Bethany do it, or in a passing drill. We should always be present. So that's what I mean. I work with those 4 words, and I make sure everybody work with those 4 words, and I don't really accept anything else. You can do mistakes, you can take a shot, you can do a pass, but you need to connect to that, and then you create this environment. And I know from my experience that that's an environment that is fun to be in, because you help each other, you can be yourself, you can feel freedom when you play, but you need to have the standards. And I think Molly's a really good example for that.
You know what? It's about the environment, and I think that really resonates because I'm a Man United fan, and we had the greatest manager, you know, in also British football. And you know what he what he made was an environment where the whole club, so the chef, so obviously the kit men, so obviously the receptionists, they were all involved. They were all really together, and no one felt really left out. I think that fourth one be present. I think it's the most important one, because I just think having everyone involved in it is makes people feel really valued and heard. I just wanted to ask you about the way it's working when also the club. Who's your link in terms of who you go up to in terms of the recruitment of players? Was also Levy that guy that you would talk to? Would you be part of that would you be part of that recruitment process?
So for the women's side, we are responsible for the recruitment. So we have a team with a recruitment group where we discuss players. So agents give us names. We watch games as well, and we watch players and so on. But when it comes down to decision making on who we're actually going to sign, we don't have any technical director or sporting director for the women's side. So it comes down to the meeting with me and the analyst team and Vicky and Andy. And when we take the decision there, it's built on how we play, how I want it. So we would never sign a player that I don't want, for example, or if I don't really keen on feeling like this is the right player, we move on. But then it's also the board is with us, because we also using the board with the budget and everything and the experience they have, and that's but they don't take the decisions, but they are, when we are done with our decisions, they are actually reflecting with us, because we are one club and we are building an identity. And I meet, Johan Lange, the technical director for the men's team. I meet Scott Mann as well. I meet Daniel Levy sometimes, but then we don't really speak about what do we need for the team. They ask about what we need, but they're not that into details with us, because then it becomes too many faces for that. But they are a part of it, though. Yeah.
What is Levy like to also deal with? Because he's been known to be a person that really gets what he wants. He's obviously had a background of really doing that. He's a hardcore man. Can you talk to me about your meetings with him and how he really runs throughout the club?
I mean, for me, I normally meet him when I'm at games or board meetings or in groups, basically. So I mean, he has a lot of stuff to do. So and I have a lot of stuff to do. So mainly when we meet is when we have a board meeting, or when we are at the men's game or a women's game, or when we meet over, small other meetings. But what I can tell is that he's been around for a long time, and he has a lot of passion for Tottenham, and he want to make sure that they keep him developing both the men's side, the women's side, and academy. And for me, it shows that he has the passion for it. And the whole board is actually working really hard to make sure that the men's team also now get the right squad and the right, environment. So I can feel this year was a good year, both for the men's side and women's side and the academy, because new coaches for the men's side and women's side, but quite good result for men's side and women's side. And academy was brilliant. But the main thing this year was to see the potential that we're starting to create now, the environment we're starting to create. And I feel like that was, I think, Daniel Levy's choice when he went for these recruitments with the coaches, that he want to make sure he gets the Tottenham identity back and make sure we start from there.
You also talk about the key words for the whole environment around the club that you really you want to create. Can you talk to me about your kind of non-negotiable behaviors that you have as a coach that's also leading the team? So you talk about the environment, but what are you as a coach expecting from also the players and the staff?
The main thing is I'm in Sweden. You could be quite calm when you've come to it's not really important for me to decide everything or take the choice. I can actually use my staff to take, I can ask them and they can say stuff. But I think we should never ever do something that's not professional, like I said. And it's that, taking the shortcut to something, or if that's, not trained because it's we're tired today, or if that's something that feels like we don't do it because we want to have a shortcut. I would never do that. I would never do any shortcut. And other examples is I can forgive pretty much everybody if they do a mistake, or if they come late to a gathering or whatever. But if you start not doing that for 2, 3, 4 games, then you will probably not stay, because you cannot create a pattern with bad behavior. If you are in the training and you don't really give your 100% in every session you do, I will speak to you. But if you keep doing that, you will probably not stay in the squad, because the standards need to be there. But I'm not like black and white there. I need to make sure I try to do, because some people need to be coached for a while. But if they cannot get to that point where they can be present in the passing drills, if they never take it to the level where we can improve, I often tell that player that it's better for you to find another environment, because we're going to have big problems to actually work together. And it's nothing about the person himself. It's actually about the behavior. So not too much about the person. But on the other hand, I believe in the person. So it's quite often, it's not very often, I'm not believing in the person if they keep trying. So it's very easy, I would say, to find ways to make sure they stick to the plan. But sometimes you need to speak to them a few times. But it's not very often I decide that the player need to leave just because they cannot behave the right way. It's women's football is actually, they are so professional. There are so many passion players in the women's football that I'm very surprised if you find too many of those players.
Robert, you briefly touched on it there about the environment Spurs are trying to create as a club within the women's team. And I think as well in England as a whole, obviously we've seen with the success of the Lionesses, and even from my personal point of view, I remember watching Spurs ladies as we were back then down over at Cheshunt Football Club with less than 100 people. And then I was standing on Wembley Way watching families, groups of girls, groups of boys going to Wembley to watch Spurs in the FA Cup final. Like, how important is the growth of women's football for you in this country, especially with your daughter as well, growing up and being able to see, see people like her playing football and make that a dream?
I think when I started my journey with focusing on gender equity was when I was at the university becoming a PE teacher. And then I realized that it's actually tough for girls to get good grades in PE in Sweden, just because you play football against each other, you play all the sports against each other, and then you realize you don't play football against each other, you don't do athletics against each other. You separate men and women because we are different, right? And then when I started to read that, I also got twins. So I got a boy and a son and a daughter, and I realized no matter how much I coach my both kids, it's actually going to be my son that have a bigger chance to earn money, to be on the big stage, and I just felt like it's so unfair, because my daughter has so much passion, she loves it so much, and it's like, how is that possible? So when I kept working, and then I went into the women's football, I felt like, yes, I have a stage now where I can make my voice heard. I can actually do something for real. But in Sweden, it's hard because it's a very small country. It's not too many fans on the stadium. So when I went to England and Tottenham and basically Women's Super League, then I knew, okay, now I am at the biggest stage. This is the best league in the world, I would say. And it's the fans is coming to the stadiums. The national team is selling out Wembley. We are selling out basically Wembley for the FA Cup finals. We played at the full stadium against Arsenal at the Emirates. Okay, now I have a stage where I can actually start working again and make sure we reach out to even more people and actually make sure you are a part of this women's football journey. And I guess you're doing the same stuff, that you want to do the same stuff. And in the same time, I'm doing something that I love. I'm doing my job. I'm coaching football players to win titles and be better footballers. So it's a perfect win-win situation for me. But the main thing for me is also, when I came to this country, I didn't know that, but it's so much bigger than football, because the journalists, the press conferences, so many people, the podcasts I'm playing, I'm on, it's all over the world. And all of a sudden I realized, being in London and Tottenham, I can reach out to India, Australia, the US, and I can actually, I can help my daughter and other girls to make sure it's going to be easier for them to be on this stage, to earn their money, to play on full stadiums and everything. So for me, it's even more important than the football sometimes, because football is football and I want to win titles, absolutely. But you win or lose, but it's a new game the next week and so on. It's a new season the next season. But the women's football is something beyond that. It's going to be massive. It's just a matter of time when it is. And now I can actually be helping out to make sure it goes quicker. And I think that's feels good in my heart.
What you just sort of said there sort of resonates with exactly what we're trying to do at Beyond the Pitch as well. Like, we're trying to, it's amazing the growth that we've seen in this country, and we're obviously still really pushing, in this country. But we've spoken to journalists who are out there in Lebanon and even in Europe, and they're not getting that same attention, and we're really trying to push that as well. And we really want to help as many different places and as many different leagues and players as we can. And to do that, you have to address this now. The growth is only going to keep growing, but we really need somebody directly trying to make sort of that happen and that growth happen. And obviously you spoke a little bit about sort of the environment and how important that is to you. But I think a real concern, obviously, with these players is the pressure that is put on them to perform and sort of the mental health side of that. And obviously, speaking to Molly, she really opened up about how much, being at Spurs has helped her with that. And I just wondered sort of how do you sort of separate your players sort of as not just as players but as people? Do you have specific sort of things in place that you really emphasize sort of looking after your players and their mental health?
Yeah, I mean, one thing to get more professional help is that we actually hired a sports psychologist full-time this season. We didn't have that, and for me it was like we need to have that also. And that's not only just to take care of people who feel sick. It's going to be also to proactively work with players to be able to handle a very high pressure environment, and perhaps they have other issues in the back in their life or whatever, and to make sure they are comfortable to speak about that. And so the whole thing with the environment is to be themselves, and that you can come and play football no matter how your mental status is. And then it's also to make sure how we can improve that, because it's in the men's football you don't really speak about it too much, and then it's actually a lot. And then you look at the women's football, and I can see more people speaking about it, but I think that's really important to show other that perhaps not really know that it's so common, that this is a part of life. I think all of us having struggles back and forth, and if you can speak about it, and you can, sometimes you need to speak to a psychologist or a sports psychologist, or sometimes you need to speak to the manager, sometimes you need to speak to the chef. You need to find ways to make sure you feel trust, and when you create an environment where you feel like you can be yourself with that, that's when you can actually deal with it. And I think, without speaking formally, I feel like she has have an amazing journey and in how she can perform under that. And also this season, ups and downs, she played some amazing football. She got a little bit sick, and then she was out of the squad, coming back again in the end and doing the amazing minutes in the last game, showing that she's getting there. She's so strong now to be a footballer, but you need help in different areas, and I think that's a very important thing for me. And I think you need to use that when you watch women's football, because they're coming from, you said 100 person at Chess Hunt. Now they play in front of 76,000 people. The salary is going up. The journalist is going to start writing good and bad stuff. The social media is always there, picking on people and everything. So, it's really nice to grow a sport and grow athletes, but with that come also like the tough part with it. And hopefully we can make sure we find good ways to have a good balance, because I feel like men's football is not always a role model there when you look at how they use the stage with the social media and go at players or coaches or clubs or whatever. So hopefully we can, from this and create a little bit better environment, so we make sure we have a healthy way to, you should criticize and you should, give good and bad feedback, but not go at, not too tough, basically.
I just also want to add there, because we're going off time here, but I just want to end on really that for you, and also Robert, what makes women's football so special for you?
Yeah, I think when I compare it to men's football, it's so much more potential to develop the sport. You can develop the men's football as well, but the tempo, the quality, the players have already been professional for so long. The academies is so good. So the marginals to develop the men's football is so tough, right? And that's cool in one way. But if you look at it in the women's football, when you have so much potential to develop them mentally, physically, technically, tactically, and also the whole environment around it, and you can actually create something else than the men's football. You can actually create something perhaps a little bit better in one way. I feel like when we go to the stadium now with the games, the environment at the FA Cup final was amazing. And some games when you watch men's football, it could be quite tough. So perhaps you see the potential now that you can develop it so much with the knowledge you have, but you can actually try to create something that haven't been there before. So I think you can actually do both, and I feel like it's so, for me, I love to be developing people. I'm a teacher in the beginning, I'm a dad. I just love to make sure that we get better every day, and you can get so much better in the women's football because you haven't been around so long, and I think that's the cool part.